Bonsoir! Bonsoir, French 101 students. Welcome to our fourth video for the preliminary chapter. And as you can see in this video, we're going to be learning all about numbers. So in the first couple of videos, you learned a little bit about culture. You've learned about formal and informal ways of greeting other people, basic conversations. And one of the most basic things you need to know in any language is how to count. So we'll look at the numbers here from 0 all the way through 52, at least on this slide, but the expectation is that you would know the numbers through 59. And when you see the pattern of counting, you'll easily see how to finish the numbers after 52. Okay, so after each of these columns of numbers, basically what will happen is I will say the numbers for you so you can get used to how they're pronounced and how they sound. And after each of the columns of numbers, I'm going to ask you a question where you'll have to use one of those numbers to answer the question. And you'll basically give a response like that through Play Pause It, the interactive videos that we've been using in the last couple of videos that I've posted. So what I will do is, of course, I know when you're a beginner in a language, you're a beginner in French, you're not going to know exactly how to say these questions that I'm going to ask you or how to respond to them. But when you open up the interactive part or the little exercises that I give to you in the video, I will give you those questions and I will give you the response in French and I will put a translation next to them so you know what you're reading and you know what you're going to be saying. Even if the questions are a little bit more advanced than what you're used to at this point, that's okay. It's okay to push you a little bit farther so that you start to get more exposed to the language. The questions that I ask you to respond to, I'm not going to put questions like that on your first test or anything, so don't panic. Okay, so let's look at the first column of numbers that we see over here. These are our basic numbers up to 10. And as I say them, you can go ahead and pronounce them with me, and then I'm going to ask you a question about those. And like I said in the interactive video, when you answer that question, I will give you the French and the English so that you're able to give that response. And I'll model an answer from myself too. Okay, so the first column here we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so notice a couple of things about the different numbers you see here. 1 is a typical nasal vowel sound in French, so that means you're not going to pronounce the N, but the N kind of influences the way you pronounce the U. It's like a sound that's in your nose. So that's pronounced 1. Okay, 2 and 3, notice the silent letters at the end of these words, the X and the S at the end of 3. Okay, so these are sounds that you wouldn't pronounce unless they come before a word that begins with a vowel sound. Then you may end up pronouncing those letters in different situations. All right, 4. Notice the R at the end of this word. It has that French R pronunciation. 4. 5 has that nasal vowel sound, pretty similar to what we see in 1. 6 and 10 are pronounced like S's at the end. The X's are pronounced like S. And depending on the words that follow those numbers, their pronunciation may change, but that will come later. And then 7, 8, and 9. So 7 and 8, the T's are pronounced at the end of those numbers. And 9, the F is pronounced. So just a little bit about those basic numbers. Now, you might see that there are some questions at the bottom of this slide, like combien font 2 et 2, which basically means how much makes 2 and 2. So what's 2 plus 2? 2 et 2 font 4. So 2 and 2 make 4. Font means make, and it comes from the verb faire, which you will learn about a little bit later. But just be aware that it means make for now. Combien font 5 moins 2? So how much makes 5 minus 2? That would be 3. 5 moins 2 font 3. So you're learning some really basic math equations here with these simple numbers. So the question I'm going to ask you here would be, combien de frères et sœurs as-tu? And what I'm asking you is, how many brothers and sisters do you have? Okay, that you will see that question and its translation when you stop to answer that question in just a moment. The way you can answer that question is, and I will answer for myself, moi, me, j'ai deux frères et une sœur. So I have 2 brothers and 1 sister. So you can answer that question for yourself, and I will give you the information to do that in the video, or in the interactive version of this video. Okay, so now we'll move on to the second column, and you see the double-digit numbers. So we'll start with 11, and that's 11. Okay, so notice the nasal vowel sound there. 11, 12, 13. Notice the R sound when it gets combined with a T, sounds like t, 13, not treize, but 13. 14 is 14. 15, 15, another nasal vowel sound there. And then finally 16 is 16. Now when we get into 17, 18, and 19, we're going to be doing a little bit of math. This is the way French numbers work. It's basically 10 is 10, 7 is 7. So you're adding together 10 plus 7. 17, 18, 18, and 19, 19. Notice that the X at the end of 10 and 17 sounds like an S. The X in 18 and 19 sounds like a Z. So it's 17, 18, 19. And then finally the number 20 is 20. Oops, sorry about that. 20. Okay, so you don't pronounce the G or the T at the end. It's 20. Okay, now if I were going to ask you a question from this column, I might ask you something like, quel âge as-tu? Quel âge means what age. As-tu is a way of asking, do you have? So what age do you have? How old are you? So you can choose any number from this column. Maybe you're older than 20. It's possible, but you can choose whatever number works for you. So you could say, j'ai 19 ans, or j'ai 15 ans, j'ai 20 ans, j'ai 18 ans. Okay, so you can choose one of those. And like I said, I will give you the question so that you can try to respond to it. And a really good way of doing that in the moment, when you see the question, have Google Translate open. You can even type that question into Google Translate, listen to it. There's a speaker icon in Google Translate, and you can actually hear it spoken back to you. So you can get used to how it sounds, and you can refresh your memory on what it means. Okay, so you'll have a moment to respond to that question for the second column. All right, and then looking at the third column of numbers, you'll see the math continues. So 21 is 20 and 1. Oh, 21. 22 is 22. So 22. 23, 23. 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. I just noticed there is a typo here in the slide. That should be a T at the end of that for 28. But in any case, you have all the numbers in the 20s going all the way up to 30. And so you can see basically how this works is that as you get into the different double-digit numbers, you're just adding single-digit numbers to get your new number. So you have 20 plus all those individual numbers. Okay, now if I was going to ask you another question here, I might say, quel âge aurais-tu dans 5 ans? What do you think I'm asking you? Quel âge aurais-tu dans 5 ans? So what age will you have in 5 years? 5 ans. Okay, and notice when I say 5, that Q at the end gets pronounced. It's going before en, which is a word that starts with a vowel. So how old will you be in 5 years? So you could say, j'aurai 30 ans, j'aurai 25 ans. Okay, and again, I will give you the question so that you can use it to answer my question to you in the interactive video. All right, and finally, we have the numbers from 31 all the way to 52, skipping some in between, because the system basically works the same all the way up to 59. In French, the numbers after 59 are a little different than what we see here. The system changes a little bit, but we'll get to that another time. So after 30, we have 31, 32, 33, and all the way up to 39. Okay, 40 is 40, and again, you're just adding those single-digit numbers. 41, 42, 43, etc., jusqu'à 49, all the way to 49. And then in the 50s, you have 50, 51, 52. Okay, and the question that I will ask you here for the interactive part of the video is, combien font, notice the questions down at the bottom, combien font 20 et 20? So how much makes 20 plus 20? Obviously, you know the answer to that already. So how would you answer that question in French? Okay, so you might say 20 et 20 font 40. So combien font 20 et 20? 20 et 20 font 40. Okay, so you have a model question there to help you out. Okay, so I hope this helps you get more familiar with the number system in French up to 59. And numbers are definitely an essential thing to know in any language. So this gives you a good foundation. So when we move on to the higher numbers later, you'll already be a professional. So any questions, any comments, don't hesitate to let me know by email, drop by office hours, and I'll be glad to help you out. Have a great night. Bonne nuit.